who represented the three-seat district, had a stroke and declined to run for re-election. The GOP machine bosses selected Hastert as the replacement candidate. Hastert served in Springfield from 80 to 86, 6 years to make the transformation from wrestling coach with that cloud surrounding himself to politician. In 1986, Hastert received another unexpected promotion after incumbent Republican U.S. Representative John Groteberg was nominated by the GOP for a second term. He was diagnosed with terminal cancer and fell into a coma. The Illinois Republican Convention selected Hastert as the replacement on the ticket, a virtual election of the U.S. House in the strongly Republican district. So that's how Hastert got into the House of Representatives. He was rejected because of the rumors surrounding him as a high school wrestling coach. I heard from people in that particular town, Yorkville, and nearby, that Hastert was caught with inappropriate sexual contact with underage male members of his high school wrestling team. And isn't it funny? He only got into these political positions because either somebody had a stroke or somebody died of cancer.
I'm just speechless here because 9 times out of 10, Wayne, when I have a guest on like you who's predicted all this, who's broken this info, who had the courage to go with it, we can't find where you said it. But thank God you wrote about it at WayneMadsenReport.com. So if we can, please email us that story. I'd like to flashback, republish it today at Infowars.com. And I'd like to ask you to write a piece for us today, tying it all together and then linking back to WayneMadsenReport.com. Because it's no exaggeration. 50 times or more, you have broken information that is just huge before anybody else does, I guess because you do old-fashioned investigative journalism. I know when you went to Illinois to investigate, you got some real serious death threats. You had to leave the U.S. for about 4 or 5 months. You came back and those, I guess the contract that was out on you that you were warned about at the press club was removed. But let me ask you this question. How have you stayed alive this long?
I guess I'm lucky. I have to give you some other anecdotes about Hastert over the years. These are kind of humorous. I remember, first of all, when I first reported this about Hastert, this was in the middle of the Mark Foley scandal. You remember he was the Republican representative from Florida who was caught trying to solicit sex from underage male pages. Hastert's name also came up in the late 80s. If you recall, the Washington Times, which is a conservative paper, broke this story about the Franklin cover-up.
And the midnight callboy underage ring.
Absolutely, and Hastert's name came up in those rumors. And it's interesting because in 2006, when Hastert's name came up again in the Foley Pagegate scandal, the Washington Times called for his resignation as House Speaker. I think they also knew about his background, but it wasn't just Hastert. Of course, Hastert was involved in trying to cover things up for Foley. It included many, many other members of the House of Representatives, including John Boehner, who's now the Speaker of the House. And remember how Hastert became Speaker. Newt Gingrich resigned amid a scandal. And then
I tell you what, Wayne, stay there. I want you to slowly walk through this when we come back, how it's one big nest of compromised individuals in the pedo club. And we're going to get a screenshot of the original as well and republish it for everybody at Infowars.com. I hope everybody realizes that as we're sitting here listening to Wayne Madsen, I don't normally hype stuff up like this because it's not hype. It's no brag. It's just fact. Do you understand he went to Illinois? He did investigations. He's been there more than 7 times. He spent months there, in some cases each time, and he specifically broke the news as an investigative journalist that Dennis Hastert was picked out of a group of compromised pedophiles to be brought in out of nowhere and then to be made the Speaker of the House in just a few years, unheard of, because he was compromised, and he's in the same nest as John Boehner, who you wonder why he's so under control. Because the mafia that runs this country gets these pedophiles, these alleged pedophiles, and I say that with my eyes rolling, and puts them in there to then carry out the agenda because they can be destroyed at any time. And the bigger issue is, why are they burning him now? Why have they activated the FBI, who's compartmentalized and probably think they're doing a good job, to go in and do this now? We're going to make a big deal out of this because, I want Wayne Madsen to really roll through how this all ties together. And then we're going to put a special report together with his article. And the headline on his article should be, Investigative Journalist Broke Hastard Molestation Story in 2006. Subheadline, Politicians Controlled Via Sex Crimes Connected to Boehner. I mean, boom. Because the only way to stop all this is to expose the blackmail ring and how it's operating. Well, we're going to break in 3 or 4 minutes, but try to encapsulate it right now, Wayne, how you investigated it, who the players are, and how it's connected to Boehner, as you were just saying in the last segment.
Well, I investigated the Foley matter. That was Mark Foley, Republican from Florida, who was actually soliciting sex from underage male pages. You know, every decade, give or take a couple of years, we had an issue in that, mostly in the House, but also in the Senate, but mostly the House, where we had this explosion of scandal about the pages. At first, in the early 1980s, it first raised its ugly head. One of the people then who was implicated was a representative named Larry Craig, who was then a congressman from Idaho. Of course, we found out about him later. In the late 80s, we had the so-called Franklin scandal involving the Franklin Credit Union in Nebraska. And again, we had midnight tours, as you showed earlier, the headline from the Washington Times. It was worked on by my late colleague, Paul Rodriguez, and got no attention from the Washington Post. As a matter of fact, I should point out that my story on Hastert in 2006 was met with derision by the mainstream media then. I note this morning they're all calling me up now for comment and my original sources. So I think that's kind of...
it's huge. I'm giving you the floor when we come back in 70 seconds. I want you to continue to lay out more on how you were saying this is connected to Boehner. It's clear Boehner's being blackmailed. I mean, he's committing political suicide for the Republicans right now. He's selling the country out on the TPP, on the borders. Why? Well, it's blackmail. Last night, I was downtown having dinner with friends at their condo, and I called Buckley, my cousin, who also lives nearby, and I said, will you come by with the rig, the microphone and iPhone, so we can do a report on Hastert? I was going to wait till today to cover it, but I decided instead to just do one last night. And then after I shot the report, or right before I shot the report, I thought, man, Wayne Madsen talked about how it's all a pedophile ring and tied to this wrestling coach who they basically promoted so he'd be compromised. I need to get Wayne Madsen on. And, of course, he's being called by the media now because Wayne broke all this in his report. In fact, I have a copy of the report now you just sent me from 2006. But what was the title of the report then, Wayne?
I had several. I had probably about 10 reports from September 30th to around October the 10th, 2006. The first one was major cover-up suspected in GOP's PageGate, now rocking Capitol Hill. Hastert's name was mentioned in that report. September 7th to 8th, the rumors about another top GOP member of the House being involved in sexual encounters with young men for hire are confirmed to my website by well-placed sources in Washington's gay community. That was Hastert, by the way. Several other reports, again, all surrounding the Foley matter. But I think it's important to point out that the Foley situation involved other members of Congress all running for cover and trying to hire members of Foley's staff because they were implicated. Representative Tom Reynolds from New York, Shimkus, Dennis Hastert, fellow Republican congressman from Illinois, who was a member of the House Page Board.
Oh,
a lot of this has to do with the Page Board, the governing body. You know, the House Page Board doesn't exist. The House Page system doesn't even exist anymore because of the Foley scandal. They got rid of it. It still exists in the Senate, however.
So it's basically, as best I can tell, a cult of pedophiles, and that you can't get in unless you're part of it. And they've basically, like the Catholic Church, taken it over.
Yeah. There's a couple of funny anecdotes. I mean, it's a serious case. I remember walking with a friend of mine, and we encountered Charlie Rangel back in those days in the rotunda, and we, you know, if you're with somebody and they kind of look at something and it's like an inside, they have some inside information. Well, here comes Hastert walking across the rotunda with a young, very young male page. Obviously, you see members of Congress with their senior staffers, chief of staff all the time, but this was very unusual. And I noticed a wry smile on Congressman Rangel's face, like he knew something. And you know, with you know, the neurolinguistics on that one said everything. And I actually had the opportunity of running into Hastert after he was speaker at the GOP convention in 2000 in Tampa. There was kind of a people traffic jam in the arena, and he was standing right next to me, and I looked at him and I said, how's retired life treating you, Mr. Speaker? Using the honorific. I know he wasn't speaker, but it's the DC thing. And he said good, and then he said, I forgot your name. And I told him, and the guy turned pale and said, I got to get back to my Illinois delegation. So clearly he recalled the reports that I had on his misconduct back in 2006.
Oh, you're definitely on target. And Wayne, we talked about this last time you were here. I'm just going to, you agreed to do it. We never hammered it out. You're hired. I want to get you on every week. I want you writing for InfoWars. We need to talk details today. Because, you know, years just go by like seconds, as you know, and I need you on the InfoWars team. So we're going to get that done, aren't we?
Sure. Yeah, you're right about years going by, especially at 61. I feel the rush of the years.
Well, hey, listen, I mean, I'm no Hastert, so don't worry. I'm not going to ask you on a date, but you lost a lot of weight, man. You're looking good.
Well, I'm trying.
No, you're doing great. Here we go. Excited. We've talked about this a couple times. He's been here. We've discussed it. I've just never gotten it done, but we just agreed in there. I'm hiring Wayne Madsen. He'll still have WayneMadsenReport.com to be a full-time reporter for InfoWars.com. I mean, he's one of the best out there. We finally built this operation. We're going on cable. We're going on all the systems. We're already picked up by a lot of cable and TV systems already. We're on over 170 AM and FM affiliates. What I'm doing here at InfoWars.com is building a true media operation. Yes, I'm the rabble-rouser. I'm the pundit. But I bring you the bombshell guest, the intel, the reporters. Joe Biggs is going to be on the ground at the Draw Prophet Muhammad demonstration tonight in Phoenix. So all of that is coming up as well. And this is what I need. 4 or 5 more reporters, a couple of text writers, a couple of guys that can do both, a couple of ladies that can do both, so that we can really cover 3 or 4 big stories simultaneously with people on the ground. Okay, if you can, this is so big. Wayne Madsen wrote not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5. We're in his archives right now. In 2006, about Dennis Hastert and connections to pedophile rings and compromised Congress people. He's taken from nowhere, put into the House of Representatives, accelerated into Republican leadership that, you know, Ron Paul was there 20-something years and never got put in any leadership. Put into leadership, and then Boehner was under him. And Boehner's connected to all this. So I want to specifically recap it and get into Boehner and then ask Wayne Madsen before we shift gears into ISIS, the economy, and more. This signifies trying to scare people in the Republican House to get in line on the TPP, to get in line on a bunch of other issues. So I want to ask you what you think it signifies and where all this is going with Obama's unprecedented persecution. I'm not crying